Hi guys, I'm Diane and this is Narrow Dreams, and today I'm going to talk about why living on a narrowboat is not for everybody. People see you going past in the summer and it's lovely and you sat on the deck and you know, the birds are singing, and everybody as you go past will say, oh, that's the life, oh, it must be wonderful. And obviously we think it is. We love it, but I think you have to be of a certain mindset to be able to live this life, and you have to be prepared for it. I think that's the thing. So if living on a narrowboat is something that you are considering, make sure that you do lots and lots of research before you take that step. We did, and we love it, as I say, but I've heard of lots of people who have tried it and didn't like it. A lot of people say to me, oh, I couldn't do that, and give various reasons. And when we were looking at narrowboats, and when we were saying this is what we're going to do, we're going to sell our bricks and mortar house, and we're going to buy a narrowboat to live on. Some friends were saying, well, you know, where will you put all your stuff? Or I know one friend has since told me that he thought we were making a huge mistake, but didn't like to say anything. Another friend didn't think we'd actually go through with it. Thought, you know, for some reason we changed our mind in the end. Obviously we didn't. Please do excuse the rainbows everywhere. It's just window danglers that I've got up, and it is very sunny today, so we're blessed with rainbows everywhere, so please do excuse that. I'm sure it's a bit distracting, but I can't really put the sun out, so there we go. So the things you might want to think about, I mean, some of the stuff is just same stuff, different place, really. I mean, for instance, I'm filming this in between paint coats because I'm painting the bathroom, which obviously, you know, you have to do in a house. You may not have to do in a boat if you choose not to, but as you can see behind me, although we've left the bottom half of the walls, you can see it there, we've left it the wood colour. For me, it was a bit too much everywhere. I know a lot of people like it, but I didn't. So the top half, we've painted cream, and we're doing that throughout the boat, and it just lightens it up. So, yeah, some of it is same stuff, different place, but when it comes to things like painting, obviously you've got to paint the outside as well, whereas in a house these days you probably don't paint anything because you've got UPVC windows and doors, soffits, fascias, that sort of thing. So, you know, painting the outside of a house for most people has largely gone, but with a boat, you know, you've got to keep on top of rust spots and things like that. And obviously if you want it to look nice every now and again, it's got to have a fresh coat of paint. It's also a must to get the hull painted on a regular basis. Now, if you've got just ordinary bitumen blacking, then it's every 2 to 3 years. We are fortunate that the boat that we got has got 2-part epoxy on, and it was only put on the year before we bought it, so it's put on in 2017, and that lasts for between 5 and 7 years, I understand, but we will have it checked before that time is up. But when the surveyor did the survey, it was perfectly good, and you know, didn't need doing. So so you've got things like that to think about, and obviously with that comes a cost implication. So while some things may be cheaper living on a boat, other things are not. So if you're moving on board just to save money, it's probably not a good move. It's probably not the best thing you could do. So, you know, fully look into the costs of everything involved before you take that plunge, because in addition to the maintenance of the boat, you've got to pay waterways fees. For us, that's just over £1,000 a year. You've got to pay insurance, I mean, you can't get a waterways licence if you haven't got insurance, and if you're a liveaboard, you want contents insurance and everything, really, just like you would have in a house. Obviously, you've got your costs associated with moving the boat, so diesel and your servicing of the boat, oil and filters and all that sort of thing. You've got to heat the boat, so you might have to buy coal or wood or whatever. So, you know, it isn't always the cheapest option, and you need to look into all that. But I'm not going to go through all the costs, because better people than I have done that. If you want to look at one for costs, look for David on Cruising the Cut. He's done a few on various aspects of boating costs, so it's worth looking at those. So, as I say, some things are pretty much the same, and cooking's another one of those. So we've got a gas oven and hob, 4-burner hob, just like you'd have in a house. Very, very similar. It's got a grill and an oven. One thing that is different is that it's bottled gas. You can absolutely guarantee that if you bottle, or when your bottled gas runs out, it will be in the middle of Sunday dinner, when it's blowing a gale and chucking it down, and somebody's got to go outside into the gas locker and change the gas bottles over. You've also got to remember to make sure you've got a spare gas bottle that's full rather than a spare that's empty, because then you're really in trouble. But yeah, it's things like that, you know. It's not just piped in like it is in a house and it's never ending. You have to be prepared to go out and change it over and make sure you replace that bottle, so that you don't run out and end up not having any gas at all. Also on the front of cooking, we've got a microwave, but we only use that microwave when we're in the marina on shore power. If you were to buy a boat and be continuously cruising, which, you know, when Neil retires we hope to do that, you can't really use them just on your batteries and inverter, because it just takes too much power. So you've got to do without that. We do have a slow cooker, which doesn't take as much power, and a Ramoska, which are really good, and it's a low power item. But you also have your wood burner or coal stove that you can cook on top of. You can cook jacket potatoes inside of it. So, you know, there are different options, but it's something you need to think about, because it's not exactly the same as it would be in a house. Cleaning, you would think, oh well, that's much easier because it's a much smaller space, and while that's true, there are a few points that you may not have thought about. So if you have got a wood burning stove, they're absolutely amazing. They warm the space, they're just so cosy, and boy do they produce a lot of dust. So you've got to be prepared for that, and be prepared to dust down any surfaces daily. My husband made me and my son laugh not long after we first started using the stove, when the weather cooled down a bit, because I said something about stoves being dusty, and he said, well, ours is not too bad though, is it? Because, you know, there's never any dust in here. So we do obviously have to thank the dusting fairy who comes out and does it every day, so that my husband doesn't see that dust does indeed build up every day. But yeah, it is a bit dustier and dirtier than, you know, a house with gas central heating, but it's a small space, so, you know, it's not too bad. But whereas in a house you may just maybe have a corner where you can just shove things out of the way and you can't see it, or into a big walk-in cupboard or whatever and you can't see it. In a boat you haven't got as much room, obviously, and one little area that gets a bit messy has a huge impact. So you do have to be a lot more organised. You have to be a lot tidier. You have to put things away as soon as you've finished using them. I used to have masses of work surface in the house, in my kitchen. I've got one very small area now that I can use as workspace. So as soon as I've used something when I'm cooking, that's got to go away. Gone are the days of thinking, right, I'm going to cook a meal, I'll get all the things out and I'll put them all on the sides and use them as I need them. They all have to go away as I've used them because there just isn't room. So you've just got to be a little bit more organised. Now, if that's not you, you're going to really struggle, or you're going to have to change. It wasn't me, to be honest, and I've had to change. And actually, I'm much happier for doing so, because you never get to the stage where you've got masses of tidying up to do, which I used to have in the house, you know, maybe after a weekend where I'd not been doing as much because I'd been spending time with the family. Come Monday, you look round and you think, oh my word, grandkids had been or whatever. Got loads of tidying up to do. Well, as I say, it doesn't happen here because there's nowhere to let the mess build up. So that is an advantage, but you've got to get to that stage where you're more organised to be able to do that. The big boaters issue that, you know, put 2 or 3 boaters together, within 10 minutes, you can guarantee they'll be talking about toilets. That is probably one of the biggest changes if you move on board a boat that you will notice. So if you're squeamish and you're not very happy to be up close and personal with your poo, basically, then this might not be the life for you. Because it doesn't matter what option you choose. There are several options for toilets on a boat. But whichever one you choose, you are going to have to deal with it. There isn't anything that is just a flush and forget method like you have in a house. So for us, we've got a cassette toilet. That is actually what we wanted when we were looking for a boat. And I think we're probably going to replace that this year, but we're going to replace it with another one. It's quite an old model. And there's no spare cassette, so we're going to get a newer model with a spare cassette, so that if you get out somewhere and the Elsan is not operational, or there isn't one or whatever, you're not stuck. But talking about the Elsan, I hope you're not eating, but if you've got a cassette toilet, what that involves is taking out a tank, basically, that sits under the bit that you sit on, and collects everything that goes into there. And it just, you put in some chemicals that breaks it down, but basically it's just all a big sloshy mess in there that you have to carry to an Elsan point and empty. Now, this stuff that you put in, the chemicals you put in, as I say, it breaks it down. Does advertise that it cuts down on the smell. It may cut down on the smell, but you take the top off a cassette from a toilet, there is going to be smell. My daughter came to visit us not long after we first moved on, and my son was going to the Elsan to empty it, and he made her go along. She was nearly sick. She had to leave the Elsan room on the marina because she just couldn't stand the smell. We've been fortunate so far, but I've heard horror stories of splashbacks and things like that as well. So, you know, you've got to be prepared that these things may happen. Also, on ours, the flush mechanism is just a sort of a push sort of concertina thing that puts some nice scented water in. That cleans it round, but it won't always clean everything, so you have to manually, you know, get toilet paper or whatever and clean the inside of the bowl. So again, you're up close and personal with that waste material. You've got to be able to deal with that. And even if you think, well, we'll have a pump out then, I didn't like the idea of a pump out, because basically you're probably sleeping in bed with a big tank full of your own waste underneath the bed. And they have been known to spring a leak. So I didn't really want that, but some people do. And, you know, while at the outset that may seem easier, you don't have to empty it anywhere near as often. It all goes into a tank, so you don't really see it. And then, I mean, here at our marina, if you're having a pump out done, the marina staff do it for you. But, you know, if you're close, we've been close when people have been pumping out, and it really does smell. And again, there is the possibility that, you know, it could leak or whatever, and you may have to do work on it. So that waste is not being flushed away when you flush, it is just being flushed to somewhere else in your boat, and that still has to be dealt with. There are composting toilets, there are incinerator toilets, but again, you know, they all have to be dealt with in some way. So if you're moving onto a boat, be prepared for that, and look at all the options and see which one you think suits you best. So while we're in the bathroom, we may as well stay in the bathroom, and we'll come to the subject of hot water. Now, if I'd have been doing this 2 or 3 weeks ago, what I would be telling you would be slightly different. Well, I'm going to tell you both anyway, but up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, every time we wanted any hot water, so this is either for washing up, for washing the clothes, for having a shower, whatever we wanted hot water for, we had to heat it up manually in some way. And by that I mean, say I wanted to wash a few pots, I would just boil a couple of kettles, pour that in, wash the pots, easy. But it's time consuming, it's not like just turning a tap and getting hot water. Or if I wanted more hot water, say I was washing clothes or we were showering, things like that, we had to run the engine. So we had to run the engine every day for at least an hour. And it really, you can only do that between 8 in the morning and 8 at night. So you've got to decide, you know, when you want your water. Because when it's really cold, even though the tank's quite well insulated, it does cool down. So you want to be doing it really just before you need it. So, you know, that was quite an issue. Now, when we were cruising, it wasn't really an issue because we were moving every day. And so the water is being heated up by the engine. And it's always there because you're moving every day. But if you're in a marina, that's not the case, obviously. And as I say, you've got to run the engine just to run the engine. You're not going anywhere, you're just running the engine. But a few weeks ago, we went to the boatyard. We had an immersion heater fitted in we had a new calorifier and the immersion heater put in. So now all we need to do is flick a switch and we have hot water, which is so much easier. What we don't have is a bath, and that was one of the things when we moved on board. I thought, I wonder if I'll miss that. And everybody says, you know, I do miss a bath though. But we lived in our house that we sold to buy the boat for 22 years. And although we were always going to get round to it, we never did. We didn't have a shower. We only had a bath. So whenever we went away or whatever, I used to love having a shower because I do prefer to have a shower. So we've been on board 7 months and up to now, I haven't missed a bath. I'm not saying that I won't, but I haven't missed one yet. You can get boats with baths on, but in the main, they tend not to be full-size baths. They tend to be smaller because obviously there's not as much room on a boat. So, you know, whether at any stage we would consider doing that, or, you know, if we change the boat and get a different one, whether we'd consider getting a bath, I'm not sure. At the minute, it isn't something I would think about. And obviously, as we get older, I might not want to try and get in and out of a bath. A shower probably is the way to go for us. But for you, it'd be something to think about, you know, what you would prefer. So, as I said, we had to run the engine for water, but we also needed to run the engine because this boat had never been fitted with a battery charger. So the only way that our batteries could be charged was to run the engine. And you might think, well, why do you, if you're not going anywhere and you're on shoreline, why do you need your batteries charged? Well, we've got a 12-volt fridge that obviously runs directly from the leisure batteries, and our water pump and gulper also run from the 12 volts. So if we haven't got battery power, we haven't got a fridge, and we haven't got water, basically, because it won't pump it to the taps and the shower won't pump it away. So we needed to do that every day as well. But when we had the calorifier changed, we also had a battery charger fitted. So now we don't need to do that. But if you're out cruising or whatever, it's quite important to think about looking after your batteries, because certainly when you're out not on shore power, all your systems run from your batteries, and you can still run sort of 240 volt appliances and things by putting your inverter on. Most boats have an inverter now, and ours is no exception, but you can't really run anything that's too powerful, because it will just take all your battery power. You need to do what's called a power audit, and again, there are lots of videos out there about power audits on boats and things, about how many amp hours each device uses, and how far you can let your batteries go down before they need charging again. So, you know, that is quite a complicated thing to get your head around when you've not had to do that before. So all these things are not things to leave until you move onto a boat and learn about. You need to really think, I'm going to learn all about that beforehand. Do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of research before moving onto a boat. The main thing that people have said to me, though, that boat life wouldn't be for them, is because of the lack of space. Don't you get under each other's feet? Where do you put all your stuff? How do you cope not having room for this, that and the other? And to be honest, for us, it hasn't been a problem. But you've got to really like the people you live with, let's say that, because in a house, you know, you can stomp off and go to another room. And to an extent you can in a boat, you know, there's a bedroom that you can go down to, but obviously it's not as easy. And you're always, when you're moving about the boat, if I'm washing up and Neil wants to go down to the bathroom or whatever, I've got to really stand up against the sink so that he can get past, things like that. So, you know, you've got to think about that. Is that something that's going to annoy you? If it isn't, then you're fine. But if it is, you know, again, is this the life for you? And also things like your stuff. You know, do you like having loads of clothes? If you do, you're going to struggle because you've not really got room. If you're sort of an Imelda Marcos of shoes, you're going to have to really downsize that collection. I think I probably went from about 25-ish pairs of shoes to, I think I've got about 6 now, if that, because there's simply no room. Also, if you're not on shore power, things like hairdryers are quite difficult. I mean, I am on shore power and still don't use a hairdryer, but, you know, a lot of people do. And things like electric kettles, if you're not on shore power, you're not going to be able to use an electric kettle. Even though we are on shore power, we don't. We have one that goes on the hob and it sort of whistles when it boils, and actually I love that. But it takes longer to boil. It's a lifestyle where you've not got to be in a rush for anything, really. But if what you're looking for is the slowing down of life, and a simplifying of life, as I say, not necessarily a cheaper option, but a simplifying of life, then this certainly would be a life for you. I was an avid collector of books when I was in a house. I had well over 1,000 books, which we had to sell and give away and take to charity shops. But that doesn't mean that, you know, I can't read as much, because now I've got a Kindle, which the library is filling up at an alarming rate, and I've got Audible as well, so that I can listen to them when I'm doing other things. So you can still do that. And music these days, you know, even if you've got a huge music collection, it doesn't tend to take up any room because it's more more likely to be digital these days. So things like that are quite easy. But, you know, I wouldn't change this life for anything. I wish we'd done it years ago. It's to me, it's absolutely amazing. Looking out of the window and seeing the, you know, the scenery and the nature that we see every day, it's just amazing to me. Having all this light that you can see flooding in every day because of all the windows and things, it's just made such a huge difference to my mental well-being, to be honest, to live this life. So, you know, if you do think it's for you, really do your research, watch as many videos as you can, read all the magazines, read all the books, and go for it. But don't just jump in with your eyes not fully open, because, you know, there can be a huge difference. So I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have, if you could please give it a thumbs up, that would be great. It would also mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel. That really does make a difference to us YouTubers. Lets us know we're not sat here talking to ourselves, basically. But as I say, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you'll join me next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.